The envelope trembled in my hands, its crisp edges a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. I'd recognize that pretentious letterhead anywhere, Kimberly's lawyer husband, Robert. What could he possibly want? I glanced at the clock. Tom would be home soon, and Mary was puttering in the kitchen, humming softly to herself. My mother-in-law's gentle presence usually soothed me, but today it only heightened my anxiety. Whatever this letter contained, I knew it would shatter our fragile peace. With a deep breath, I tore open the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. My eyes widened as I scanned the contents, each word like a dagger to my heart. "Anna?" Mary's voice floated from the kitchen. "Everything all right, dear?" I quickly stuffed the letter into my pocket. "Fine, Mary, just some junk mail." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but how could I tell her? How could I explain that her own daughter, the black sheep of the family, was threatening to expose a secret that could destroy us all? The front door opened and Tom's familiar footsteps echoed through the house. "I'm home," he called out, his voice warm and comforting. I plastered on a smile and went to greet him, the weight of the letter burning a hole in my pocket. As I kissed his cheek, I caught a whiff of his aftershave, the same one I'd given him for our anniversary last month. It seemed like a lifetime ago now. "How was your day?" I asked, desperate for normalcy. Tom shrugged, loosening his tie. Same old, same old. Johnson's still riding my ass about that merger, but I think we're close to sealing the deal." I nodded, only half listening. My mind was racing, trying to process the implications of Robert's letter. Should I tell Tom now, or wait until after dinner when Mary had gone to bed? "Anna?" Tom's concerned voice snapped me back to reality. "You okay? You seem distracted." I forced a laugh. "Just tired, I guess. It's been a long day." Tom's eyes narrowed slightly, but before he could press further, Mary bustled into the room, wiping her hands on her apron. "There you are," she exclaimed, pulling Tom into a hug. "I've made your favorite, pot roast with those little carrots you like." As we settled around the dinner table, the conversation flowed easily between Tom and Mary. I pushed my food around my plate, my appetite gone. The letter felt like a ticking time bomb, and I was the only one who knew it was about to explode. "Anna, dear," Mary said, touching my arm gently, "you've hardly touched your food. Are you feeling all right?" I looked up, meeting her kind eyes. For a moment, I was tempted to confess everything, about the letter, about Kimberly's threats, about the secret that could tear our family apart. But as I opened my mouth to speak, the words caught in my throat. "I'm fine," I managed, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about some things." Tom's fork clattered against his plate. "All right, what's going on? You've been acting weird all evening." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I got a letter today, from Robert." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Mary's face paled and Tom's jaw clenched. "What did it say?" he asked, his voice tight. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the crisp paper. As I pulled out the letter, my hand shook slightly. "It's about Kimberly," I said softly. And a secret. Something about Mary." Mary's gasp was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Oh, God," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. She couldn't. Tom slammed his fist on the table, making us both jump. Damn it. I knew she'd pull something like this. What does she want this time? Money? An apology? I shook my head, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's worse than that, Tom. She's threatening to expose something big, and if she does, it could destroy everything we've built." As the weight of my words settled over us, I realized that our quiet, comfortable life had just been turned upside down. And somehow, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after the letter's arrival, I found myself alone in the kitchen, clutching a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Tom had left for work early, his kiss on my cheek a fleeting comfort. Mary was still asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath our roof. I pulled out Robert's letter again, my eyes tracing over the words that had upended our lives. What secret could be so terrible that Kimberly would use it as leverage? And how could I protect Mary from the fallout? The sound of shuffling footsteps broke my reverie. I quickly stuffed the letter back into my pocket as Mary entered the kitchen, her face lined with worry. "Anna, dear," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I couldn't sleep a wink last night. What exactly did Robert's letter say?" I hesitated, torn between my desire to shield her and the need for honesty. It wasn't very specific, Mary. Just that Kimberly knows something about your past, something she thinks could hurt us all. Mary's face crumpled, and she sank into a chair. Oh, God, I never thought. I hope she'd forgotten. Forgotten what? I pressed gently, leaning forward. But Mary shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I can't, Anna. I just can't. It was so long ago, and I've tried so hard to make up for it. Before I could respond, the phone rang, shattering the tense silence. I answered it, my heart racing. Anna? Tom's voice crackled through the line. I just got a call from Kimberly. She wants to meet us for dinner tonight. All of us, including Mom. I glanced at Mary, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. Tom, I don't know if that's a good idea. Your mother's not feeling well, and we don't have a choice. Tom cut in, his voice hard. She says if we don't show up, she'll go public with whatever this secret is. We need to face her head on. As I hung up the phone, Mary grabbed my arm. What is it? What did Tom say? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Kimberly wants to meet for dinner tonight, all of us. Mary's face went pale. No, I can't face her, not with what she knows. Mary, I said gently, taking her trembling hands in mine. Whatever this secret is, we're family. We'll face it together. But I need to know, what is Kimberly holding over you? For a moment I thought she might confess, but then she pulled away, shaking her head. I'm sorry, Anna. I need some time. Please, can you tell Tom I'm not feeling well enough for dinner? As Mary retreated upstairs, I felt a surge of frustration. How could we fight this if we didn't even know what we were up against? The day passed in a blur of anxiety and speculation. By the time Tom arrived home, I was a bundle of nerves. Where's Mom? He asked, loosening his tie. Upstairs, I replied. She says she's not feeling well enough for dinner. Tom's jaw clenched. She has to come. We need to present a united front against Kimberly. Tom, I said softly, I think there's more to this than we know. Your mother, she's terrified. Whatever this secret is, it's eating her alive. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. Damn it, Anna. What are we supposed to do? Let Kimberly blackmail us? Before I could respond, we heard a thud from upstairs, followed by a muffled cry. We raced up the stairs to find Mary crumpled on the floor of her bedroom, clutching a small, worn notebook to her chest. Mom, Tom cried, kneeling beside her. What happened? Are you okay? Mary looked up at us, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant for any of this to happen. With shaking hands, she held out the notebook. Here, she said, her voice barely audible. This is everything. The truth about Kimberly, about me, about the mistake that could destroy us all. As I took the notebook, its weight feeling far heavier than it should, I realized that our family's carefully constructed facade was about to come crashing down, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. With trembling hands, I opened Mary's notebook, Tom peering over my shoulder. The faded pages were filled with Mary's elegant script, detailing a past we never knew existed. Anna, Tom, Mary whispered, her voice weak. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to come out. As we read, a picture of a tumultuous family history unfolded before us. Mary wrote of Kimberly's troubled youth, the rebellious teenage years, the constant fights, and the mounting debts that threatened to tear the family apart. Mom, Tom said, his voice cracking. Why didn't you tell us any of this? Mary's eyes filled with tears. I thought if I could just keep it all buried, we could move on, be a normal family. I continued reading, my heart sinking with each revelation. There were tales of Kimberly's reckless behavior, of Mary and her late husband's desperate attempts to keep their daughter out of trouble. But it was the last entry that made my blood run cold. Oh, God, I gasped, looking up at Mary in shock. You covered for her. Mary nodded, her face a mask of shame. It was the accident, the one that killed that poor young man. Kimberly was driving, but she was drunk. I told the police it was me behind the wheel. Tom stumbled back, his face pale. Mom, how could you? That's perjury. You could go to jail. I know, Mary whispered, but she was my daughter. I couldn't let her life be ruined. I thought if I took the blame, she'd change. Get better. The weight of this revelation hung heavy in the air. Suddenly, Kimberly's threat made terrible sense. If this came out, not only would Kimberly face potential manslaughter charges, but Mary could be prosecuted for her false testimony. "We have to stop her," I said, my mind racing. "We can't let her expose this. It would destroy everyone." Tom nodded, his jaw set. "We need to confront her. Tonight, at that dinner she demanded." As we helped Mary to her feet, the doorbell rang. We froze, exchanging panicked glances. "I'll get it," I said, my heart pounding. I made my way downstairs, praying it wasn't Kimberly showing up early to ambush us. I opened the door to find Robert standing there, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. "Anna," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced, but I need your help. It's about Kimberly." I ushered him inside, calling for Tom. As we gathered in the living room, Robert's composure crumbled. "I found out what Kimberly's been up to," he said, running a hand through his hair. "The blackmail, the threats. I had no idea. I swear, I didn't know anything about it until yesterday." "What happened?" Tom asked, his voice tight. Robert pulled out a stack of papers from his briefcase. "I found these in Kimberly's desk. They're plans, detailed plans on how to extort money from your family, using some secret from the past." My stomach churned as I glanced at Mary, who had gone deathly pale. "There's more," Robert continued, his voice breaking. She's been embezzling from my law firm, hundreds of thousands of dollars. If this gets out, I could lose everything. My career, my reputation, everything." The room fell silent as we absorbed this new bombshell. Kimberly wasn't just threatening her family. She was destroying her husband's life, too. "What are you going to do?" I asked Robert softly. He looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "I'm going to stop her. Tonight at dinner. I'll be there, and I'm bringing all of this evidence with me." As Robert's words sank in, I realized that our family dinner had just become a powder keg, ready to explode. With Mary's secret, Kimberly's threats, and now Robert's revelations, I knew that by the end of the night, nothing would ever be the same. I looked at Tom, seeing my own fear and resolve mirrored in his eyes. Whatever happened, we would face it together. But as I glanced at Mary, huddled small and fragile on the couch, I couldn't shake the feeling that our family was teetering on the brink of destruction. The weight of Mary's notebook and Robert's revelations hung heavy in the air as we prepared for the confrontation with Kimberly. But something nagged at me. A missing piece of the puzzle. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. "Tom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need to check something in your mother's attic. Can you stay with her while I go up?" He nodded, his face etched with worry. "Be careful, Anna. Who knows what other skeletons are hiding up there?" I climbed the creaky stairs to the attic, my heart pounding with each step. The musty air enveloped me as I pushed open the door, dust motes dancing in the fading afternoon light. Boxes upon boxes of memories surrounded me, each one a potential landmine of family secrets. I began my search, methodically combing through years of stored-away pain and regret. An hour passed, then 2. I was about to give up when my hand brushed against something tucked behind an old trunk. A small, ornate box, its lock rusted with age. With trembling fingers, I pried it open. Inside, nestled among faded photographs and dried flowers, was a letter. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were still legible. My breath caught in my throat as I read the first line. "Dearest Mary, I'm sorry for everything I've put you through." It was Kimberly's handwriting, unmistakable even after all these years. I devoured the contents, each word more shocking than the last. "Anna?" Tom's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "What did you find?" I held out the letter, my hand shaking. "Tom, you need to read this. It's from Kimberly, written years ago." As Tom read, his face paled. The letter was a confession, an outpouring of guilt and remorse. Kimberly detailed how she had stolen from her parents' retirement fund, using the money to fuel her reckless lifestyle. But it was the last paragraph that truly stunned us. "I know I can never repay what I've taken, both financially and emotionally, but I want you to know that I'm trying to change. I've enrolled in rehab, and I'm seeing a therapist. I hope that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. All my love, Kimberly." Tom looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. She tried to make amends? But then why is she blackmailing us now?" I shook my head, my mind racing. "I don't know, but this changes everything, Tom. We need to show this to your mother." We rushed downstairs, only to find Mary and Robert in a heated discussion. "What's going on?" I asked, clutching the letter. Mary looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "Robert was just telling me about Kimberly's embezzlement. I can't believe she would do this. After everything." I stepped forward, holding out the letter. "Mary, there's something you need to see. We found this in the attic." As Mary read the letter, her hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Kimberly," she whispered. "My poor, troubled girl." Robert leaned in, reading over her shoulder, his brow furrowed in confusion. "This doesn't make sense. If Kimberly wrote this, why is she threatening the family now? And why didn't I know about any of this?" The pieces suddenly clicked into place. I gasped, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "Oh my God," I breathed. What if Kimberly isn't behind this at all?" 4 pairs of eyes turned to me, a mixture of confusion and dawning horror on their faces. "Think about it," I continued, my words tumbling out. "The letter from the lawyer, the blackmail threats, they all came after Kimberly and Robert got married. What if someone else found out about the family secrets and is using them against us?" The room fell silent as the implications of my words sank in. We had been so focused on Kimberly as the villain, we never considered there might be another player in this twisted game. Tom was the first to break the silence, his voice hard with determination. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Now, before we confront Kimberly, we need to find out who's really pulling the strings." As we huddled together, formulating a plan, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the precipice of an even greater revelation, one that could either save our family or tear it apart forever. The revelation that Kimberly might not be behind the blackmail threw us into a frenzy. We had mere hours before the dreaded dinner, and now we were chasing shadows. "We need to talk to Kimberly," I insisted, pacing the living room. "If she's not behind this, she might know who is." Tom shook his head vehemently. "No way. We can't tip our hand. If she is involved, we'll lose our advantage." Robert, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly spoke up. "I might have an idea. There's someone at my firm who's been acting strange lately. Always asking about Kimberly, about our finances. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now—" "Who?" Mary asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "James Holloway," Robert replied. "He's a junior partner, ambitious as hell. I caught him snooping in my office last week." My mind raced. Could this James be our mystery blackmailer? "We need to check him out," I said. "Robert, can you access his files at the firm?" Robert nodded grimly. "I can try, but we're running out of time." As Robert left to investigate, I turned to Mary. The confession letter from Kimberly was still clutched in her trembling hands. "Mary," I said gently, "we need to talk about this, about Kimberly." Tears welled in Mary's eyes as she looked up at me. "I never knew she felt this way," she whispered. "All these years I thought she was just selfish, uncaring, but she was trying to change." I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. "It seems like it. But Mary, why didn't you ever tell us about this? About the accident, about covering for her?" Mary's face crumpled. "I was ashamed, Anna. Ashamed that I couldn't protect her, that I had to lie to keep her safe. And then when she seemed to fall back into her old ways, I thought I had failed completely." Tom knelt beside his mother, his voice soft. "Mom, you didn't fail. You did what you thought was best. We all make mistakes." Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Robert. "Found something. Coming back now." The tension in the room was palpable as we waited. When Robert finally burst through the door, his face was ashen. "It's worse than we thought," he said, spreading papers on the coffee table. "James didn't just know about Kimberly's past. He's been tracking all of us. Bank records, private investigators' reports. He even has photos of Anna leaving Mary's house the day she found the notebook." My blood ran cold. "How is this possible? Why would he do this?" Robert's voice was grim. "Money, of course. But there's more. I found emails between James and Kimberly." The room fell silent. Tom was the first to speak, his voice tight with anger. "What kind of emails?" "Romantic ones," Robert replied, his voice breaking. "They've been having an affair for months." The revelation hit us like a physical blow. Mary gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tom swore under his breath. And I felt a surge of determination I hadn't known I possessed. "This ends now," I said, standing up. "We're not waiting for dinner. We're confronting Kimberly and this James character right now." Tom looked at me, surprise and admiration in his eyes. "Anna, are you sure? This could blow up in our faces." I nodded, my resolve firm. "I'm sure. We've been reactive for too long. It's time we took control of this situation." As we gathered our evidence and prepared to leave, I caught sight of our reflection in the hallway mirror. We looked battle-worn but determined, a family united against a common threat. "Whatever happens," I said, looking at each of them in turn, "we face it together. No more secrets, no more lies." With a collective nod, we stepped out into the fading afternoon light, ready to confront the truth, whatever it might be. As I closed the door behind us, I knew that by nightfall, our family would never be the same again. But for better or worse, we would face our future head-on together. The drive to Kimberly's house was tense, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I clutched the evidence we'd gathered, the old confession letter, Robert's findings about James, and Mary's tear-stained notebook, like a shield against the storm we were about to unleash. As we pulled up to Kimberly's lavish home, I noticed another car in the driveway. "That must be James," Robert said, his voice tight with anger. We approached the front door, our steps heavy with purpose. Tom reached out and rang the doorbell, the cheerful chime a stark contrast to the gravity of our mission. Kimberly answered, her eyes widening in surprise. "What are you all doing here? Dinner's not for hours." "We need to talk," I said firmly, pushing past her into the house. "Now." James appeared from the living room, his face a mask of confusion. "Robert, what's going on?" "That's what we'd all like to know," Tom growled, his fists clenched at his sides. We gathered in Kimberly's opulent living room, the tension palpable. Mary sat quietly, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. Robert stood by the fireplace, as far from Kimberly as he could get. I took a deep breath and laid out the evidence on the coffee table. "We know everything, Kimberly. The accident, the embezzlement, the affair with James. We know about the blackmail." Kimberly's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie," Tom exploded. "We found your confession letter to Mom. We know about the money you stole from our parents. And now this, blackmailing your own family?" James stepped forward, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. "I think you should all leave. We can discuss this at dinner as planned." "No," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "We're doing this now. No more secrets, no more lies." Mary finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Kimberly, sweetheart, is it true? Are you and James together?" Kimberly's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "I'm sorry, Robert. I never meant for it to happen." Robert let out a bitter laugh. "Never meant for it to happen? You've been lying to me for months." As accusations flew back and forth, I noticed James inching towards the door. "Stop right there," I commanded. "You're not going anywhere until we get to the bottom of this." James's face hardened. "You have no right to keep me here." "I'm leaving." Tom blocked his path. "Not until you explain why you've been digging into our family's past. Why are you blackmailing us?" James's eyes darted around the room, like a cornered animal. Suddenly, he made a break for it, shoving Tom aside and bolting for the door. Robert was faster. He tackled James to the ground, sending papers flying everywhere. As they grappled on the floor, a gun skittered across the hardwood. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Kimberly's eyes widen in recognition. I saw Mary cover her mouth in horror. I saw Tom lunge for the weapon, but it was James who reached it first. He scrambled to his feet, waving the gun wildly. "Nobody move," he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. We all froze, the situation spiraling out of control faster than I could process. James backed towards the door, keeping the gun trained on us. "James, please," Kimberly pleaded. "Put the gun down. We can talk about this." "Talk?" James laughed hysterically. "It's too late for that. I know too much. If this gets out, I'll lose everything." As James ranted, I caught Tom's eye. He nodded slightly, understanding my unspoken plan. We had to act fast. "You're right, James," I said, taking a cautious step forward. "You do know too much, but so do we. If anything happens to us, everything comes out. Is that what you want?" James's hand trembled, the gun wavering. I took another step, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. "Just put the gun down," I said softly. "We can figure this out together." For a moment I thought he might listen. Then I saw his finger tighten on the trigger. "Anna, look out!" Tom shouted. As the gunshot rang out, I felt myself being tackled to the ground. The world exploded into chaos around me. and I knew that whatever happened next would change our lives forever. The gunshot echoed through the room as Tom's body slammed into mine, knocking us both to the floor. My ears rang, and for a terrifying moment I couldn't breathe. When I finally managed to look up, the scene before me was chaos incarnate. Robert had tackled James, wrestling for control of the gun. Kimberly was screaming, her hands pressed against her ears, and Mary, oh God, Mary was on the ground, a crimson stain spreading across her blouse. "Mom!" Tom yelled, scrambling to her side. I followed, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. As we reached Mary, her eyes fluttered open. I'm okay," she whispered, her voice weak, "just grazed my arm." Relief flooded through me, quickly replaced by white-hot anger. I whirled around to face Kimberly and James, who had been subdued by Robert. "This is what your lies and schemes have led to," I spat, my voice shaking with rage. "Your own mother could have died." Kimberly's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she sobbed. "It all just spiraled out of control." "Spiraled out of control?" Tom's voice was low and dangerous. "You've been manipulating and lying to us for years, Kimberly. And for what? Money? Power?" James, his face bruised from the scuffle with Robert, laughed bitterly. "You don't know the half of it. Tell them, Kimberly. Tell them everything." The room fell silent, all eyes on Kimberly. She looked around, her gaze lingering on each of us before finally settling on Mary, who was being tended to by Tom. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, her words hanging in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. The shock of her announcement momentarily overshadowed everything else. Robert stumbled back as if he'd been struck, while Mary let out a small gasp. Is it mine?" Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kimberly shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's James's. I'm so sorry, Robert. I never meant to hurt you." The revelation hit us all like a physical blow. Robert's face contorted with pain and betrayal, while Tom looked like he might be sick. "How could you?" Mary's voice cut through the tension, weak but filled with disappointment. "After everything we've been through as a family, how could you do this to us? To Robert?" Kimberly's composure finally shattered completely. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know why I do these things. I'm so messed up, Mom. I need help." As I watched this broken woman, my sister-in-law, the source of so much pain and turmoil in our lives, I felt a strange mix of anger, pity, and exhaustion wash over me. "We need to call the police," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "James fired a gun. Mary needs medical attention." Tom nodded, pulling out his phone. As he dialed, I turned to Robert, who looked shell-shocked. "Robert," I said gently, "are you okay?" He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Okay? My wife is pregnant with another man's child. My career is probably over. I don't think I'll ever be okay again." As sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer by the second, I looked around at my fractured family. Mary, wounded but alive. Tom, angry and protective. Robert, betrayed and lost. Kimberly, a sobbing mess on the floor. And James, the catalyst for all this chaos, silent and sullen in defeat. How had we come to this? How could we possibly move forward from here? As the police burst through the door, their shouts adding to the cacophony of emotions in the room, I felt a resolve harden within me. This wasn't the end. Somehow, someway, we would find a path through this darkness. We had to, for all our sakes. But as I watched the officers handcuff James and tend to Mary, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The truth was out, but its consequences were only beginning to unfold. And I knew that before this was over, our family would be tested in ways we never thought possible. The days following the confrontation passed in a blur of police statements, hospital visits, and sleepless nights. As I sat in the waiting room of the courthouse, waiting for James's bail hearing to begin, I couldn't help but reflect on how drastically our lives had changed in such a short time. Mary was recovering well, her arm in a sling but her spirit unbroken. Tom hadn't left her side, his anger at Kimberly tempered by concern for his mother. Robert, shell-shocked and betrayed, had filed for divorce. And Kimberly was a ghost of her former self, her pregnancy now a visible reminder of the chaos she'd wrought. As we filed into the courtroom, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was it. The moment where we'd finally face the truth head-on. where secrets would be laid bare and justice, hopefully, would be served. James stood at the defendant's table, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. When he saw us enter, his face paled. Kimberly, seated on the opposite side of the room, couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The judge called the court to order, and as the proceedings began, I found myself gripping Tom's hand tightly. This wasn't just about James's crimes. It was about our family's future. As the prosecutor laid out the case against James, the embezzlement, the blackmail, the shooting, I watched Kimberly's face. With each damning piece of evidence, she seemed to crumple further into herself. When it was time for victim statements, Mary surprised us all by standing up. Her voice, though weak, carried clearly through the courtroom. "James," she said, looking directly at him, "what you did was unforgivable. You threatened my family, you shot me, and you took advantage of my daughter's vulnerabilities. But I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to say that I forgive you." A collective gasp rippled through the room. James's eyes widened in shock. Mary continued, her voice growing stronger. "I forgive you, because holding on to this anger and pain will only destroy us further. And Kimberly," she turned to her daughter, tears in her eyes, "I forgive you too. We've all made mistakes, but it's time to heal and move forward." As Mary sat down, I felt something shift in the room and in myself. The anger and resentment that had been festering inside me began to dissipate, replaced by a tentative hope. The judge sentenced James to prison, and as he was led away, Kimberly broke down sobbing. Without thinking, I moved to her side, putting an arm around her trembling shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, over and over. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "I know," I said softly, "but it did happen, Kimberly, and now we have to deal with the consequences." As we left the courthouse, our fractured family huddled together against the chill wind. Robert, his face etched with pain but also resolve, approached us. "I can't forgive what happened," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I don't want to be consumed by bitterness either. I want to be part of this child's life, if you'll let me." Kimberly looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. "Really? Even after everything?" Robert nodded. "It's not the child's fault, and maybe this is a chance for all of us to start over." As we stood there, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us, I realized that this was our turning point. We could let this destroy us, or we could use it as a catalyst for change and growth. "We have a long road ahead," I said, looking at each member of our battered but unbroken family. "But we're going to walk it together. No more secrets, no more lies, just honesty, forgiveness, and love." Tom squeezed my hand, a small smile on his face. Mary nodded, her eyes shining with tears, and Kimberly, her hand resting protectively on her stomach, whispered, "Thank you." As we walked away from the courthouse towards an uncertain but hopeful future, I knew that our family would never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, we could be something better, something stronger, something built on truth and forgiveness rather than secrets and lies. The journey wouldn't be easy, but as I looked at the faces of my family, bruised but not beaten, hurt but healing, I knew we were ready to face whatever came next. Together.